Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. We're looking at some Christian evidences today. You know, I'm real big in archaeology and history, but we're looking at some other theological arguments throughout history, kind of some things we just touch on the class known as Christian Evidence at Indiana Bible College. So thanks for being with us today. Check out our other videos. So we're looking at the cosmological argument, and is it self-refuting? And this is the argument of design. So the argument is, okay, everything's designed. It's very obvious everything is designed. But if everything that exists is designed, then wouldn't that be a self-refuting argument? That means existence has to be designed, and the fact that something exists says it's designed, but it doesn't necessitate a designer. That existence just means design. And I would say, you know, and obviously, no, it's not a self-refuting argument. I would say that design indicates a designer. And I think that's so huge for so many people. I remember reading Whitaker Chambers and his kind of conversion experience. He said he was looking at his 2-year-old, and he looked at his ear, and he said, man, there's just no way that randomly happened. That had to have a design and purpose. And so since communism is atheistic, it led his journey out of communism and atheism into being editor of Time magazine and testifying before Congress. I was listening to a atheist not long ago, and I don't remember which one, but it was, you know, kind of a famous guy. And he was talking about this conundrum he's in. He says, I look at my children, and he said, so on a theoretical level, I know they're just random conglomerations of atoms, and it doesn't mean anything. It's just chance. Consciousness is chance and all this. He said, but there's another part of me that I want to provide and protect them. If anybody tries to hurt this random conglomeration of atoms, they're going to have to come through me. I have this fatherly instinct that says, I love them. And so then you get into how can random conglomerations of atoms, how's it just not the pleasure principle? How is there actually love there? How does this, where he even defines love outside the Word of God? You know, where do definitions come from outside the Word of God in a large sense, in a moral sense, in an ethical sense of that term? We know certain definitions maybe, but it wouldn't need the Word of God necessarily, but you know, these moral things. And so he says, I live in this bifurcated world where I teach one thing, and then my feelings, and when I'm at home, my family, I live something else. Wish I could remember who that was, but I just thought it was so amazing. And it gets into the question, what is truth? How do you even know what reality is? And this is when I was reading a lot of Immanuel Kant, studying some things for college degree one time. You know, he had the nomia and the phenomia. That the nomia is the really real, the phenomia is that which our senses perceive. And our senses could deceive us, and everybody's senses could be wrong or different, at least in minute ways. And so how do we know how do I know that this is really, whatever it is, plywood or something? How do I know that? How do I know that my senses aren't deceiving me? And how would I know that somebody comes in from another part of the world, feels this, looks at it and says, no, that is vinyl. And we know this. And so these are interesting questions. I want to bring up one other thing too about Anselm's proslogion. I've never been a huge fan of Anselm's argument of, if there's a being that I can think of nothing greater than, that it must exist. I've never followed that logic, really. I've never said 1 + 1 must equal 2. In that instance, I do say 1 + 1 equals 2. Even though, I mean, you get into 1 watts and 1 watts, you know, the number 1, then there's millions of electrons plus millions of electrons, or molecules or something, you know. Well, I don't want to get into that. The breath it took to say that, blah, blah. But there's parts of his, so I think the ontological argument about existence is good. I don't necessarily think some of Anselm's arguments are great. But I've heard people just like say, no, they're the best. But I've never seen it but that doesn't mean it's not out there, because I certainly haven't seen even a portion of everything out there and read a portion of everything out there on it. So, but God exists. They that come to God must believe that He is, and He's a rewarder of those that diligently seek Him. I love you. I'll talk with you later. Check out our other videos. Bye-bye.